Listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Muted.
The webinar will be uploaded to the TPE YouTube channel within the week. So if this is one of the times that you know someone who might not be able to make it, you can go ahead and look at it on our YouTube channel. And then you can also ask questions throughout the webinar. And so we got all of your questions ahead of time that you registered with. But then throughout the webinar, if you have any questions that you might have about anything specific, in the GoToWebinar box, there's a specific space for you to be able to ask questions. And so just please feel free to type your questions in, and I will either answer them directly in the chat box, or I'll make sure that the presenters are able to answer the question at the end. And so with that, we will just go ahead and introduce our presenters.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Marshall Greenleaf. I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life at the University of Massachusetts Lowell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Victoria Ferris. I'm the Senior Director of Campus Life at the New York Institute of Technology, the Old Westbury campus.
And like I said, my name is Donald Walker. I'm an Assistant Director in Housing and Residence Life at Towson University, and I'll serve as today's moderator. And as we get started, just some of the webinar outcomes and overview. As a participant, we want you to be able to describe the methods to effectively budget for the TPE Onsite and job search experience, identify potential funding strategies and resources, and also determine new techniques to be financially prepared for one's job search. In addition, the quick overview for today on the things that we'll be going over is just initial preparation. So how do you map out your expenses? Different funding strategies, additional ways to save, and then we'll offer other tips, tricks, and advice. And so with that, I will turn it over to Marshall and Victoria.
Thanks. Marshall, you want to do an intro first?
Sure. Well, hi again, everyone. Again, my name is Marshall Greenleaf. I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. I've been at Lowell about 9 years, and my role in the office focuses on staff recruitment, development, and training. And so TPE is a yearly event for me, and I've gone the past 7 years. And then in the past, I've also gone twice as a candidate. So I've been able to see the placement exchange from multiple sides and experiences. And so in my current position, I also work with our current graduate fellows in our higher ed master's program, and do a lot of training with them around budgeting and getting ready for the job search and what that means. And so I've experienced that way. So I know it's a lot to take in and a lot of different considerations to think about. And so hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions today.
Great. And I'm Victoria Ferris again. I'm Senior Director of Campus Life, which is otherwise known as Associate Dean for Campus Life here at New York Institute of Technology. I actually just started this position in August. In my current role, I oversee our student conduct and care and concern and the Office of Residence Life. And prior to that, I served as Dean of Residence Life at St. Peter's University and have a lot of residence life experience. Like Marshall, I've seen TPE on both sides of the table and both appreciated and had challenges on either side. So there's pros and cons to both. But I've been involved with TPE since my first job search. I think it's a really great opportunity for graduate students. I also have volunteered there to coach candidates, and so I'm happy to be a part of this and hopefully trade some tips and tricks on saving a few bucks as you get ready for this.
All right, so to start off, we want to talk a little bit about your initial preparation and mapping out expenses. And so really when you think about going to TPE, or if you're still considering, or if you know that you're going to go to TPE, you're going to want to start mapping out what the costs will be. And so really what you want is the goal to be no big surprises, so that you can be as informed as possible about what things will cost and what you need to do to get yourself there. And so what you might want to start now, if you haven't done yet, is just make a list of everything that is going to cost money for your TPE experience. And so we'll go into what that means, but really think about all aspects. Think about your travel, your hotel, how much you want to spend on food, what your transportation costs are going to be. Do you need to buy a suit or business attire? Kind of all of those things, and really make a list and see what your total costs are going to be. And again, we'll touch on those things specifically, but just so that you can start having an idea about how much the experience is going to cost for you. And then what I recommend doing is, after you do some research and see how much your travel and hotel and all of those things are going to cost together, think about what's reasonable for you in terms of being able to save towards that. And so one tip is to think about how many paychecks you have between now and when TPE is. Take the amount of the total of your expenses, and then figure out for each paycheck, ideally, how much would I need to be able to save in order to pay for the TPE experience. And so if you can save that amount, great. Everyone has different financial obligations and financial situations, and so even if you can save a little bit between now and then, it kind of takes away that big sticker shock or price shock when you're actually there and then needing to actually pay for things. And so as much as you're able to save in advance, the less stress and anxiety you'll have over those expenses later on. And so when you're there, you really want to be focused on being able to job search and interview and do what you need to do. You shouldn't have to, at that point, really be stressing and having a lot of anxiety around the financial aspect. That's something you can stress and have anxiety about now and get that out of the way.
Yeah, when Marshall and I were talking about this, you know, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, the theme that I heard is really prepare in advance. And so as much as you can start thinking ahead and planning ahead, it will make for a much smoother experience when you get to San Antonio. Now, I tend to be on the procrastinating side of things, so for those of you who are there, I'm with you, and hopefully this will be helpful so you can start thinking a little differently. But thinking about those expenses is really important. So like Marshall said, knowing what you need to pull together in advance is going to really help you. So you've got things like the registration or the boot camp. Clothing can be, you know, if you've already got it, great, and if you don't, it can be an expense. Luckily, I think this is the perfect time of year to start thinking about clothing, because basically everything is on sale between now and kind of mid-January. So my advice to candidates is always to go into a store and try some things on and see what you like, know what brands you like, what fits you well, what sizes you are, so then you can just pay attention to sales. So if you know, the brand of shirt you wear and the size you'll need, or the type or style of dress or suit, you can then just focus on seeing what stores have that brand on sale at different times and try to you know, be a smart shopper. But then there are also some expenses that you might not anticipate, like dry cleaning or tailoring. Sometimes you find some interview clothes that work but maybe need some tweaking. So those can be unanticipated costs, so good to start thinking ahead. And then, of course, there's the hotel. So the conference offers a variety of different hotels with, you know, varying rates. You know, Marshall and I really talked a lot about, you know, the hotel experience and how tempting it is to sort of divide up the cost to as little as possible and bunk up with a number of your friends and maybe cohort mates. But what I'd really caution you to do is be really thoughtful about that. The goal of TPE is for each of you to be able to be at your best and to land your dream job or great job or opportunity for you. And so if you know that you are a morning person and it's really important to you to get up and be able to, you know, make a cup of coffee and have a shower, best friend in the world might be wonderful, but if they're a night person and they like to hit snooze 14 times, it might not be the best fit when it comes to who you're sharing space with at the conference. And so I'd like to encourage you to really think that through and be purposeful about what's worth the money versus the, how many folks. I think that I had 3 in a room the first time I was a candidate, and we were communicated well in advance about our timelines and shower time and bedtimes and all of that, and it worked out fine. So just something to think about. Also, food and snacks in the hotels and in the conference center can really add up. So even still, when I go to the conference every year, I bring all kinds of snacks in my suitcase. So whatever things you like to eat, I would encourage you to think about what you can bring in a suitcase or where you can take a trip. So if you, get to San Antonio with some, time in advance, you can find a grocery store or someplace where you could stock up on some fruit or other snacks or breakfast. A box of oatmeal can go a long way for breakfast each day. So those are some ways that I think you can really save. And also the other unanticipated things. But if you have Advil in your bag, you don't have to pay the like $5 for a tiny little packet in the hotel lobby. So things like a lint roller, a Tide pen, all those what-if things that you might need, an extra pair of pantyhose. I'd encourage you to try to keep a list, share it amongst your friends, and collaborate to be sure you have all of those things to avoid last-minute costs.
Oh, absolutely. And I would also say just one other thought in terms of packing things in advance and the cost and travel expenses, really don't be afraid to do your homework. And so do a lot of comparison shopping if you're planning your travel, especially if you're flying. Like look at multiple websites. There's a lot of discount travel websites out there. So don't be afraid to spend a lot of time comparing so that you're able to find the best deal possible. I always like to recommend to people bringing a travel coffee mug or something like that because free is awesome. And so sometimes you might be in a situation where the hotel will have free coffee service in the lobby or there's water stations or some sort of drink stations. And so not having to pay for that out of pocket can add up over the course of 4 or 5 days.
That's great. And the other with the plane travel and shopping ahead is the like taxi or shuttle. Pricing between, if there's 3 of you that land at the same time, an Uber might be less expensive than a shuttle where you have to pay individually. So like comparing all of those small things also it adds up.
Yep, yeah, definitely look at all your options. And then one aspect of the job search that happens after the conference that people sometimes might not anticipate needing to spend money on is the actual on-campus interview experience. And so schools handle this in a lot of different ways. If you're extended an on-campus interview, it will probably involve some sort of travel. Some schools will cover all travel expenses. Some schools won't cover any travel expenses. And some might have some different situations about how travel expenses work. I mean, I've seen some schools who will pay for it, but if they offer you the position and you no longer, and you decline it, then you're responsible for part of that cost. And so it's really a good idea that when you're offered an on-campus interview, if they don't tell you how travel expense and arrangements work, you're going to want to make sure that you ask. Because if traveling across the country for an interview is cost prohibitive for you, you don't want to be in a situation where then you have to kind of backtrack and say, oh, actually, I can't do the interview. So it's good to just make sure that's very clear. And most schools will be upfront about how travel works and travel costs and reimbursements work. But if they don't, just make sure that you ask. Yeah, so again, some more likely than not reimbursed some amount. Some may have those limits or stipulations, or they might say, oh, so we'll pay for part of your plane ticket, or we'll pay up to $300 of a plane ticket, and then you'd be responsible for the rest. So again, just make sure you know. And then really be selective about on-campus interviews, because this is a really big travel cost, both for you as the candidate and also for the institution. And so really think through your interactions that you've had with an institution before committing to an on-campus interview, and really try to evaluate if you can realistically see yourself working there. It's really flattering to have on-campus interview offers, and it's exciting. But if, based on your prior interviews or based on location, if you know it's somewhere that you probably aren't going to want to work at, it's definitely okay to so again, just be really thoughtful about that, and really know what the situation is when you're having those first discussions with an institution. And really, this is a great problem to have because everybody wants on-campus interview offers, so just being mindful and thoughtful about it will really help you as a candidate.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I've sometimes heard from candidates that it feels really hard to know how to pull out of a search, and once you're in, you sort of feel obligated to see it all the way through. But that is just a myth, and it's it's not true. So certainly talk to a mentor or a friend or someone you trust about how to do it. But if you know that it's a job that you're not very likely to take, going on an on-campus interview is really not a good use of your time and resources. And it is very much okay to pull out of a search or withdraw, decline an invitation, and do so without damaging any type of relationship. So some of the funding strategies to consider for TPE. The TPE has actually created a scholarship which is new this year, and so there is a blog post on the TPE website where you can find some more information, but essentially TPE is offering scholarships for up to $500 towards expenses, so I would encourage you to take a look. Also, sometimes students are able to get support from their department as a grad assistant, or if you have a graduate student association. So I'd encourage you, it's worth asking because no is always better than not asking and missing an opportunity because this stuff is expensive. As Marshall said, as much as you can plan ahead and start thinking about even, $20 a paycheck or cutting back on the Starbucks or ways that you can start to, put your pennies away in advance is going to be helpful for you. If there's ways to make some extra money over winter break, sometimes you might be able to pick up hours in your GA, or if you're going back home over the winter recess, babysitting, whatever kind of helps pay the bills. But also this is a great way, families are always looking for gifts, people don't know what to get. This is a great, ask for it. I really could use a couple of ties for when I start interviewing. You'd be surprised, I bet you'll find people who are very eager to help you get the things that you need. The other thing that's not on here that I would just add is I took out student loans to support part of my, my expenses with graduate school, and so I actually looked at the option of taking out like $1,000 extra or whatever to get a refund and be able to utilize some student loan funds, so I knew I'd be able to cover the costs. Certainly a personal choice and not something everyone could do or would want to do, but maybe also something to consider.
So some additional ways to save. So resume paper. Resume paper can be pretty pricey, and it's something that I've seen people, when they're starting the job search, run out and buy multiple boxes of really nice but also really expensive resume paper. I would say that for your TPE experience, you're not really going to need it, or at least need a whole lot of it. So in terms of setting up interviews for TPE, the online database of candidates and employers, it's going to have electronically all of your search materials. So if you upload any cover letters, your resume will be there, your candidate profile, it's all in the system. And so it's already available to employers who are going to print that out as needed, or might have a laptop or iPad there and can access it that way. And so don't feel like you need to be able to hand out a hard copy resume to every interview. It's a great idea to have a couple copies of it, sure, but it's not something you're going to need for every interview because most likely your employers are already going to have all of that information on you and already have it ready. We talked about suits, mixing and matching, and really looking for those deals. So again, just to reiterate what Victoria said, now is a great time to be on the lookout for sales. a lot of major department stores will have reduced prices. And so really keep your eyes out and do some shopping because you can get a lot of suit material pretty inexpensively compared to other times of the year. We talked about sharing with friends and the hotel and really making thoughtful decisions around that. And also take a look at what hotels are in the area. So for San Antonio, there's a lot of hotels near the convention center. So you might have already signed up through the NASPA Housing Bureau. If you haven't done that, or you might wait until, or if you're waiting until later to book your hotel, really take a look at what's around and what might be a little bit further away might be less expensive. I would say also, though, make sure it's in walking distance, because if you need to take a cab to get to the convention center, or if it's a huge hassle, that's going to impact just your ability to rest and recuperate and take some downtime during the actual interview days. Map out inexpensive places to eat. So you can ask your hotel staff if they have any recommendations. I mean, there's tons of apps and programs now. I mean, look at Yelp, look at TripAdvisor. You'll be able to find some different priced restaurants. And so usually you can find some more inexpensive places to eat, and that can really help you save big in terms of your budget and how much you're spending on food. Also, you know, scope out hotels. Do they offer breakfast? Is there any sort of continental breakfast? That sort of thing. And then thank you card. So in our effort to be sustainable, a lot of places are, a lot of institutions now are okay with an email saying thank you. Some institutions might still expect thank you cards. It's a good idea to have some, but again, they can be pretty basic. Don't feel like you need to go all out on thank you cards, as long as you're thanking interviewers in some way. So whether that be a card or whether that be an email, you're going to want to make sure you're doing that follow-up. But again, much like resume paper, you don't need to go all out on the thank you card. And I would say also, when you're thinking about it, it's best to really just be more on the kind of basic side of the thank you card anyway. You know, I've seen some with cartoons on it and lots of pictures and things like that, which some people will absolutely love, and it might turn off some employers. So that's a really subjective, personal thing. So if you err on the side of caution, it's always going to be a safe bet. And those are typically less expensive to get as well.
Great. And then other kind of tips and tricks. I mean, ultimately, I think my advice is to remember why you're there. And so if you planned ahead and you've identified a handful of restaurants or places to eat dinners that are going to be affordable, and somebody you're with really wants to go to this like really great sushi place or something, you know, it's sometimes really hard to cave and not go, but you're there for a very specific purpose. And if at the end of TPE you feel like you feel good about the interviews you had and you feel like there's some great prospects and potentially some on-campus offers, you know, whether or not you ate at that nice restaurant with your friends is not something you're ever going to remember. So as much as you're able to plan in advance and stick to your budget and remember, you know, what's really important in this, I think that's kind of a key.
So thank you again, Victoria and Marshall, for sharing all of that information. I want to remind candidates, if you have any questions or anything like that, this is a great time to start typing them in to the question box at the bottom. But I will start, in the meantime, I'm going to start running through some of the questions that came in ahead of time. And so just based on your experiences, what is the typical cost once on site for meals, travels, etc.?
That's really
Sure, I think that can be. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
No, go ahead, Marshall, because I don't have a good answer.
Oh, well, neither do I, only because it's so different. I mean, it's different based on where you're coming in from. I mean, that's going to really impact the flights. Different locations can have a lot of different costs, and so hotels from year to year can be extremely different as well. So, I mean, all of those factors are going to contribute to how much that costs for you. Whether you're sharing a room or not is going to impact how much it costs for you, and how you're able to manage meals and what you want to spend on that can be really different. So I would say from my perspective, I don't think there is a general cost. I think you'd have to look at averages from years past, and that's why I think really doing research now and comparing all the flights you can, comparing all the hotels you can, is going to be your best bet for finding some good deals.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you know, I'm from New York, so I'm often generally less shocked by the price of things anywhere I go than, you know, my colleagues or friends from other parts of the country. So it's definitely all relative and depends where TPE is each year. I was in San Antonio for a NASPA conference last year, and I thought it was a great city. I'm excited to go back this year. I found the prices to be to me, kind of fair for such a nice kind of touristy town and part of town. I would, just to give a ballpark on something, I would say that I've rarely been able to get like kind of a coffee and a very basic like breakfast, like piece of fruit, muffin, you know, like continental style breakfast for less than about $10 at most kind of conference hotels like this. So just to give some point of reference there, I think like lunches at TPE last year, if I ate on site, were about $12. And then of course like dinner can really run the gamut because you can find anything from, you know, McDonald's probably to like a fancy 5-course meal somewhere. But yeah, like the coffee and bagel is probably still like $8 or $10.
Yeah. I would definitely echo all of those sentiments in that it really depends on the city. Having been to San Antonio, things aren't unreasonably priced, but whatever you can do to try to curb some of those costs and not necessarily eat at the nicest places, or I guess the most expensive places is what I really want to say, is always advantageous for you. And so another question that was sent in ahead of time, and I'm going to kind of play off of this question a little bit, is that if you had to, if you know you're working on a limited budget and you absolutely had to spend money on something when you're going to on-site, what would you rank probably as a priority to make sure that you spend the money on, whether that be, especially when it comes down to personal things, so maybe not the conference center or you know registering for the on-site event, but what personal thing would you rank at the top of the list, and then what are some of the things maybe at the bottom of the list that you could potentially cut?
For me, I depend on a good night's sleep. I am at my best when I am well rested, and when I'm not, I really can struggle to get through a day, and especially a day of interviews. So the thing that's I think trickiest about TPE is you don't ever get to fully appreciate what it's like until you go through it. But the days are long, and if you think about a 30-minute interview where you're really fully engaged and you know using your brain to share good, thoughtful examples of things and show your best personality, and you're doing that even 5 times throughout the day, it can be a really long day. So to me, being able to have a hotel that I know I'll be comfortable in and one that's not too far away has been where I've found, for me, I'd rather do that and eat like never in a restaurant and literally like bring oatmeal for breakfast and make coffee in the room and refill my cup like Marshall's Point and really not go, you know, out to eat or things like that, because I know that that's how I thrive best. So my advice is really to know yourself and think about what you need to be at your best and focus your budget to match those priorities.
I mean, I think hotel and the ability to have somewhere where you can have downtime where you're not on, I mean, I can't stress enough how valuable that is. So I 100% agree with that. And then I also think as you're preparing, back to finding a suit and shopping for clothes, you can find some really good quality stuff out there without needing to spend tons of money on it. And so I think everyone wants to look their best and feel confident in what they're wearing, don't think that you need to go out and buy like a $500 suit, because typically people really aren't going to tell how much you spent on a suit. And so really look for those deals, and find different ways to, mix match, fill out your wardrobe in that way. But I don't think you need to spend a ton of money on that either if you're savvy and looking at good deals in advance.
And
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I was going to definitely agree with what both of you said. I mean, once you get that good night's sleep, I was, like Victoria was saying, Marshall, I completely agree in that, looking and feeling your best is going to carry you in a lot of different situations. And so my recommendation always is, if you're going to prioritize something, maybe it's looking your best, not spending a whole lot of money on a suit, but if you buy one suit, that's something that you can switch and swap out your shirt, your shoes, and other accessories throughout the experience, to be able to create a different look or make sure that you're feeling like you're at your best, but you don't necessarily need to buy 3 and 4 suits to be able to make it through the TPE on-site process. And I know that having worked with candidates in the past, sometimes people go to do that, but I always say you don't need to do that, and you can find some really good bargains. And even if you just have one, you probably will be okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I also find that for me, a dress and a jacket can be a lot less expensive than a full suit. So I tend to buy dresses and mix and match like a couple, like 1 or 2 black blazers that can go with any of the dresses. And it's much less expensive for me than buying a full suit.
So I think, hold on, a question just came in. Or it's a tip actually, which is always great. Someone wrote, if I can share some money saving tips. Kohl's had a shirt and matching tie set for $5. It was something I found suddenly, what was such an awesome deal. Coupons can help rack up the savings too. I also use Ebates to get cash back when I shop online, so this will come in handy when buying a plane ticket online. Also, signing up for price alerts on flights can help grab a good deal on plane tickets. And so thank you so much for that comment. That was from Sarah. And so again, those are great suggestions that we can definitely all benefit from.
Just another, this isn't really a money-saving tip, but just a practical tip as we were just kind of talking about attire. If you are buying something new, especially if it's new shoes, I can't recommend enough that you walk around in them. And even in a new outfit, I think, feeling like it fits and you're comfortable in it is really important, and that you've taken out all the pins of those folded up shirts and all that jazz. But breaking in your shoes is so key, and it's something I have forgotten to do before I've gotten there and really regretted it at the end of the day, because the convention centers are huge. So even just the walking to and from interviews, you'll hit your 10,000 steps on your Fitbit probably by lunch. So breaking in a new pair of shoes will be helpful.
Absolutely. And so I think we've gotten the gist of all the questions that were asked ahead of time. If there are any other questions that you have, I would definitely encourage you. You can type them in now, or you can always get in contact with us on all of our social media. And I'll show those sites or how to get in contact with us on social media in just a moment. I'm going to encourage everybody to join us in the future. Our next webinar is actually going to be in 2017 on Thursday, January 5th, where we're going to talk about acing the phone or Skype interview. Many times what you'll find with the TPE Onsite event, some schools will do phone or Skype interviews prior to the event. And then we'll have another candidate question and answer session on Thursday, January 12th at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And in those question and answer sessions, you are able to just come on and ask whatever questions that you might have. You can send them in when you register for the webinar, or you can always email us at candidates@theplacementexchange.org, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. And then on Thursday, January 19th, we're going to talk about TPE Onsite process logistics. And so as we get closer and closer to the on-site event, we want to be able to talk with you a little bit more about the process and the logistics that you should be prepared for. TPE Onsite, just a reminder, is March 8th through the 12th, 2017 in San Antonio, Texas. Early bird registration will end on January 6th, and so that's just a few short weeks from now. And you can find all of this information on theplacementexchange.org. I want to also encourage everybody to continue to volunteer through the Placement Exchange website. And so if you want to volunteer to help out at TPE while you might have some downtime, I'll encourage you to be able to do that as well. And so unless there's anything else specifically, that is all that we have for you today. And thank you again to Victoria and to Marshall for taking your time to prepare and being a part of our webinar. We really appreciate all of your support for the Placement Exchange.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.